Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's four-part learning series on Indigenous knowledge, relations to land, language, and wellness. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tammy Kaye-Dokis. I'm from Kitigan-Zibi. I'm Algonquin. I am currently living in North Bay, and I am the Indigenous STEAM coordinator. Our program is called the Kikindaswin Mokusin Indigenous STEAM. So I'm the coordinator of that program. And we also have Dakota, who's here with us today. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Dakota.
Awesome, thanks, Tammy. So Ani, Wache, Sego, and hello, everyone. My name is Dakota, as Tammy just said. So I'm our Indigenous STEAM lead. And so I kind of have two different roles. One of them is kind of a support role for Tammy. And then I oversee and kind of help run our mentorship program as well, in which we're involved with secondary school students. So yeah, miigwech.
Thank you. And so for those of you that are just joining us right now, I want to today invite Mona Tolley, who will be our guest this evening, and she'll be presenting the topic on Anishinabe relations to land. So let us welcome Mona here this evening. And Mona, thank you so much for joining us and bringing your knowledge and your experience to us. And I'm really excited and looking forward to your presentation this evening. So I'll let you introduce yourself, and you have the floor space.
Perfect. Miigwech for inviting me. For some reason, I had initially thought that the audience was going to be youth. And when I heard what the goals were for, I was brought back to wanting to tell a story, a specific kind of story that would relate to this. And so I kind of just left it there. I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. And then when I asked, like, oh, okay, so is this about youth? And Tammy had told me, oh, it's going to be everyone. And I was like, oh. And I thought for a moment, I might change my mind about what I was going to present, but I was reminded by an elder how important that our stories are. And so I decided, no, I'm going to keep this, because sometimes you have to listen to that voice that tells you to go ahead and do something. So just to let you know that this presentation is something that I would often do when I was teaching high school students. However, I believe that whatever, if you're a teacher or whatever competencies you're trying to bridge, those things can always be accessed by stories. And our lives are stories. They're a series of stories, and I think it's important to acknowledge how important these things are, especially within Indigenous knowledges. So I just wanted to say that in context of where I'm going with this. So I'm going to just share my screen, and then I'll talk as we're going through this. All righty. And can you see this?
Yes, I could.
Now, I have another question. If I'm sharing it like this, can you still see the Zoom screen, or is it just the PowerPoint?
Yes, we see participants, chat, the Q&A at the bottom.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your presentation.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get to. Okay, great. So when I talk about protocols, or the importance of protocols, of even if it's just introductions, it's important to understand that our ways of knowing and our ways of doing as Indigenous people have so many things that are embedded in them. But one of the most important things, I think, is the understanding of relationships and how important relationships are. So protocols let you know certain things about me, like what my connections are. It also signifies my roles and responsibilities. And within that, there's a sense of belonging. So belonging to place, clans, and nation. And to also recognize that what I know is only based on where I am in my learning journey. And I cannot speak on behalf of others. This is only what I know based on the relationships I've made, as well as the experiences, the learning experiences I have been through. So I think that part is important. And as we talk about protocols, I think one of the things that I'm reminded of is, you know, there's these words that are coming through about indigenization. And I think it's important to keep in mind, like, our ways are there for really good reasons. And because of that, I wanted to do this opening prayer, or some people might say affirmation of gratitude, or whatever it may be. But I'm just going to say this as an opening for our gathering here this evening. Miigwech Kijemanado kakana ke go ka gijendang. Miigwech kijemanado onje aki nibi kizis tibi kizis ashijanagoshag. Miigwech onje kakana awesi zag kakana ke go nethauging. Miigwech onje kamijen kakana ke go kijemano mazian. Miigwech onje nado demag. Wiro kao yakozajig shawan nim nebajig kinamakosajig kayawa wisinajig. Wiro ka wishinam kijinabwakayam kichimigwech. So if we're talking about what is a relationship, one of the things that I've always, when I was teaching or when I was you know, just trying to really talk about this, is I would always use the example of a plant. And a relationship is like growing a plant, because you put your time, which is focus and energy, towards growing something. And what you put towards it and where you put that your plant, the environment it's in, determines its growth. So just like relationships that we may have with our family, with our friends, our community, we put that time in, and we create memories, and we create these stories because of that relationship. So because I have this understanding that storytelling is important, that sharing our stories together can provide a way of seeing that is through experience. That is what I'm going to share with you this evening. And I'm going to talk to you first about this little plant here. And this little plant is one of my favorite flowers. When you actually look at this, like in your hand, it looks like little candy. And it's so beautiful. You find this in areas of swamp or bog. It's usually near Labrador leaf teas. And it's a beautiful, beautiful plant. Comes out in a certain time, well, depending where you are, and then, you know, it goes through its phase. And for me, maybe about, my gosh, I don't know how long ago, maybe, I don't know, 7 years ago or 5 years ago, I was traveling. I was going to spend my summer up in James Bay. And on the way there, it was at the end of spring, it was at the beginning of summer. And I remember stopping along the side of the road, and I remember seeing this plant, and it was just starting the little buds. And I remember being excited because they were so beautiful. But that was it. Like, it was just a passing notice of something on the land. And I think that looking back now, one of the things I understand is that the land speaks to us in different ways. And sometimes it looks to speak to us in the way in which we understand, in a way of we will get a message from it. So for me, this plant was a part of it. So as I was there during that summertime, I was going through a particular difficult part in my life. I was struggling emotionally with, I was kept thinking about stuff, and I was kind of sad about what was going on. But besides that, out of all of the time that I lived, that I was out in the bush, the one thing I've never gotten to see was a moose swim. And it's something that I really, really wanted to see in my lifetime, but it just had never happened up until then. And so whenever I was on the water or near the water, I would look, because I always thought that would be an amazing sight. So this day that I was on the water, I was fishing, and I kept thinking about this sadness that I had, and I just kept thinking over and over again about it. And suddenly, through the willows, I seen this moose head come out, and this moose started walking, the one in the picture there, started walking towards the water. And I remember in my mind saying, please go swimming, please go swimming. And that moose stopped right at the edge of the water, and it turned and it looked right at me. And then it slowly went in. And it was such a beautiful feeling, knowing that I was being gifted this experience. And it was just a few minutes that this happened. But after the moose crossed over to the water and went on the other side, I was so happy, and I kept thinking about it, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I realized that being there, seeing that, having that experience changed the way that I was thinking. It changed the way that I was feeling. And that to me was very, very important to realize, that the land has that power to do that. One of the things that I've often heard elders say is that the land is healing. And through experience, I know that to be true. A lot of the ways of our people have it's just in the ways of doing, whether it be ceremonies, preparing for ceremonies, all of this is on the land. So that same summer, which was really interesting, was that again, I was out fishing. I love fishing, so that's what I was doing. And I was on a river that was part of a reservoir hydroelectric dam system. And it was a beautiful place. But what was interesting that day was we weren't catching anything. And usually that was like a really good spot to be at. And nothing though. And I kept trying different spots, and it was interesting, because I was thinking, geez, I don't know what's going on today. But I kept fishing anyways. And then I looked on the left of the boat, and I seen the water turn. And the water was flat, like it wasn't moving. We were sort of like on I forget what you call it. It was a flat part that was beside the river. And when I looked over the boat, it maybe was about 4 feet by maybe 3 feet. The water just rolled as if something was under it. And I thought to myself, wow, what is that? And then I didn't say anything at first. And then I looked on the other side and I saw that thing again. And I kind of was like, oh boy, what is that? Because whatever it was, to make the water move that much, it had to be really big. So I stopped fishing at that point, and I just sat with that feeling of what could that be. Anyways, later on, I kept thinking about it, and I remember thinking, I'm going to ask for the answers of what that could be, because I've never seen anything like that, and I think it's important. So one of the things that I did was I put down my tobacco and I asked for that information to come to me. And that night I had a dream, and in my dream I was told that it was like a water spirit. And there's more to that dream, but it was almost like a map, like a signage pointing me somewhere. And then so the next day I was saying, okay, I know sort of now what it is, but what about this? And then I decided, what do you do when you don't know what to do? I said, okay, I'm going to go and speak to an elder. And I decided to go to speak to someone who I thought might know about this. And she sat with me and she listened to what I was saying. And basically she told me that there's a message there for me, and that she can't necessarily tell me exactly what the message is, but to be open to receiving what that might be. And she said that in their elders talked about water dogs, and obviously it's not what I saw, but to know that the elders there have this knowledge that this exists and it carries meaning was important for me to be able to hold as I was trying to figure this out. And then I just left it there, because I know not all of our understanding is going to come in one day, and that's okay. But I just figured I'm just going to keep my eyes and my ears out for what this could be. And then I was out fishing another day, and this time a different lake, but I was again on a boat, and I saw, so we were like trying to catch pike, and you know how pike, they like to hang out near the weeds. And so we were kind of close to shore, and I was fishing there, maybe about 2 feet of water and maybe about 20 feet from the shore. And I saw something move along the shoreline. And so I had the paddle, and I was trying to get closer because I could see something on the bank there. And then I saw this little animal take 3 steps up the bank, and it stopped and it turned and it looked at me. And I'd never seen an animal like that before. And then suddenly it just popped over the bank and it went in the bush. And I was so surprised, because that's just something I didn't even know existed, I guess, at the time. So later on that day, there were other people, there were other natives that were there, and we're talking about what we had seen and explaining what it sort of looked like. And one of the people there said, yes, they remember hearing about this animal, that their grandfather told them about, and maybe I'm not saying this right, but it's a busquitch, and that this animal is a fierce animal, and that we were very honored. We should be very honored to have seen that, because people can spend their whole lifetime in the bush and not even see one. And I thought, wow, okay, I'm gonna take that. That's an amazing experience for me. And to know that our people, as Indigenous people, the collective knowledge of territory is so strong that they know of things that maybe that we still don't have yet to learn. So out of that, it was, I think, a very eventful summer for experiences. And at the end of summer, I was in a vehicle and I was heading back towards home. And this is what it looked like. This is what Tamarack looks like when it's going into the fall season. And the tamarack is the only evergreen that will turn yellow. All the other ones stay green. And this has become a very big teacher for me, this tree. But I remember heading home and I was looking out the window and I saw these trees and I was thinking, oh, it's so beautiful. And I was thinking about all the time that I had spent there, and I had saw this tree go through its season. And I was thinking, wow, I've been here for one whole season. And I stopped again, and then I saw that my flower that was just starting to brown, and it too was finishing its growing season. And as I was thinking about it, I thought about all of the memories that I had that summer, all the time that I spent on the land. And I realized that my message that I was meant to receive through these experiences was the understanding that I had created a relationship with the land. And by creating that relationship, because relationships are reciprocal, you give and you receive, that I was given a lot. I was given not just memories, but I was given learning. I was given validation. I was given understanding that our ways of knowing and doing are so strong and powerful that we need to have that connection in our life. And when we look at, as Anishinabe, if we look into our culture to see, okay, what are these pieces of all of these things that have relationships tied to them and that have that part of the land. So we have our rites of passages, we have our ceremonies, all of these things have that connection to having a relationship with the land. We talk about our sacred medicines, or we talk about fasting, we talk about all of these important pieces that signify our building of our identity, and that is there. So for me, that summer that I spent there really was about establishing, recognizing myself and how important that is in my own life. And while it was like it was a part of my life always, it's still something that I knew now that I would carry with me. I would carry it with me, and I would be responsible for that relationship that I have with the land. So not only would I go when I needed to be well or to take care of myself, that Minomodswin part, being on the land, having that relationship because I know how good it makes me feel. But also how can I give back to it? And so it's tied to so many different teachings of whether we talk about sustainability or we talk about the importance of water. All of things are tied to it. So that was just the end of that story part. But I also wanted to talk a bit about this spring. So I know that the spring, which is where we're at right now, Anishinabe people are I think so lucky. We are so lucky because we get 4 seasons, and those 4 seasons bring so much beauty, not just in what is out there, like how the land changes and how we get to be a part of seeing that, but also in what it gives us as we are going through that. And the closer you live to following the seasons, or the closer you live to harvesting or being a part of the land, that there's a connection there that it's almost like it becomes a part of you, because like right now the maple syrup is starting to, everybody is doing maple syrup. Well, you can't tell a tree when to start running. All you can do is you can be prepared and you can get ready, but once it starts, it's like go, 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 go. And you have to literally go out, collect the sap, and then prepare it and do the fire and all of that stuff. So you are receiving, and when we do things like maybe first tapping ceremony, we're being grateful and we're giving back to that understanding that we are a part of the land. We are the land. So I just wanted to talk a bit about, this spring is a time of renewal. We see the animals being born. We see the buds starting. And we know that these things, they come in conjunction with each other. One of the things that always was so fun to see as a child was that we would go to the creek and we would know that, oh, the sturgeon are spawning. Then we would see the suckers. And then after the suckers, we knew that the walleye would come. And all of these things happen because of the temperature of the water. And it was, for harvesting too, it was really good to know if you were like, you're going to go fishing or whatever, but just to be knowing that and seeing it and being a part of that, it really is a beautiful thing. I think that when we follow the earth cycles, and really when we're talking about being in harmony, when we're talking about having that balance, when we follow those teachings, that's really what brings us well-being. So I'm just going to stop sharing there, and I just wanted to share with you these stories because I don't think I mentioned previously was that most of my work that I have done has been in teaching. So I've taught Native Studies, I've taught high school English. I've taught so many different subjects, but I've also taught many different levels from grade 1 all the way to university, and basically everything in between. And currently, right now, I am working at the University of Ottawa in the job as an Indigenous curriculum specialist. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is Indigenize curriculum, yes, but not just about incorporating content. I'm trying to also get across the importance and the different ways to teach. So Indigenous pedagogy or transfer of knowledge, we also have that embedded in our ways of knowing and our ways of doing. And storytelling is a big part of that. It is a way in which someone can express holistically what it is that maybe they've experienced, that they received their learning from, and perhaps then that can shine a light for somebody else. And when they're out, they will then make that connection to someone else's story. And storytelling from, I think, an Indigenous perspective or Anishinabe perspective is sharing. I'm building a relationship with you, even though I don't really know you, but you are also receiving something from me because I'm sharing that knowledge that I do have or that I did receive. So for that, I just wanted to let you know where I'm coming from when I'm talking about storytelling as a way of transferring knowledge, since it is something that has been, used since time immemorial. So I think, Tammy, if there was time for questions or as well as any sharing that might be of, I'm trying to look at the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have anything in the chat, but what we can do is if folks want to ask Mona any questions, or as Mona said as well, to share anything that's kind of come, to you throughout the session, whether that's your own stories or even your own knowledge, you can type that. I recognize typing a whole story might be a lot. And so we actually do have the function where if you raise your hand, we can provide the ability to speak. It's so weird saying that, but there is a way that you folks can also talk as opposed to just typing. So if you would like to do that, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and then we can utilize that function as well. And if not, if you have a quick question, you can always put that in the chat too.
Dakota?
Yeah.
Okay, so the hand, raise your hand, that should be at the bottom in
Yes.
Q&A, or is that in
Sorry?
the chat? I'm just trying to find out where the hand.
Yeah, sorry. So it will be on the bottom where you have the other options of chat. It may be hidden for you though, depending on the size of your Zoom screen right now. And so if you click on the three dots that say more, you should be able to see an option in there that says raise hand. And that goes for everybody else as well, if you're listening. And so I'm not seeing anything come in the chat yet, or any, oh, here we go. So we have, oh, the name's not full right now.
Mia?
Mia Bork, who says, my family is from KZ. I'm gonna assume that's Kitagan Zibi. And they're saying that they never learned the language, but I often dream words that are in the language and wake up repeating the word. We're so connected to ancestors, it's amazing. We do have one raised hand here as well, Maya, so I'll allow to talk. There you go. So Maya, you should be good. It shows that your mic's muted, so you might just have to unmute, and then we're good to go from there.
Hello.
Awesome, we can hear you.
I just had a question for Mona. Can you still go fishing where you live?
Yes, I think that you can go fishing anywhere that you want. For me, I think I remember growing up, and maybe about not just down the road, like maybe 4 or 5 minutes away from my parents' house, is a lake that's called Pitobig, and we would go fishing there any chance that we got. We would be begging my parents or anyone to take us or just drop us off, and we spent so much time on that lake. And I remember thinking when I was small that it was so big, and now going back and looking at it, it's not that big, but there's so many memories that I have there, and creating those memories with people as well. So, my grandparents, my dad, and knowing now today, those skills that I did pick up while making these memories are so valuable. And that learning I've been able to scaffold that throughout my lifetime. And so there's certain things that that we can do once we're beyond a beginner level, for instance. Like this reminds me of when we were, so in my family, we do a lot of hunting, and we do deer hunting, moose hunting, because we're in such a beautiful location that we have that all close by. And my cousin, who's I consider my brother, we've been hunting together since we were small, since our grandparents would throw us in the back of the truck and then go in the bush. But we were beginners there. But through these experiences and spending time, we got to know the territory. We picked up those harvesting skills from my family about only taking what you need and sharing and these kind of things. So when it came to the time where I felt like, okay, this is something a goal that I have for myself. I want to be able to know through experience that I can hunt a deer, I can harvest a deer, I can clean and gut, I can butcher, and so basically from the bush to the table. I wanted to be able to know that I could do that, but I also wanted to do this in a good way. So, part of that was being able to get to that point was years in the making and was built through relationships with people as well as the land. So when I was able to get to that point where, okay, I knew this was the day, I put my tobacco down beforehand to ask for this experience that I wanted for myself. And then I received a dream of how this would happen. And then I knew that it would be time to go. And that's what I did. So I went, and it was amazing because it happened really just like my dream showed me. And I hunt with a crossbow because I'm not a big fan of guns. But anyways, that's just something that for me, I wanted to do. And with the help of my cousin, because I couldn't do everything all by myself, but to be able to have that support, to know that we can rely on our families, because they too have that knowledge, and it's a collective understanding. And I think for the most part is people want each other to do well. So we engage, we participate in relationships in that way. And this is something that when we think about, yes, with people, but we also do that with land or with the animals. Because oftentimes, that's one interesting thing I find is a lot of Indigenous people, when they say the land, they're not just talking about the sand, like they're talking about everything that grows, but also all the animals that are there as well. We're talking about the water that is there, and knowing that all of these things that are alive, that have spirit, that we are connected to, it's important for us to engage in a respectful way. So thank you, Maya. That's what that reminded me of.
I also have another question. How do you remember all these stories?
I think that when you make really good memories, those things stay with you. It's like you carry them in your mind. Some people say we carry this knowledge in our bundles. These are the things that impact who we are or add to who we are. So it's somewhat easy to remember, the big ones, the big stories, especially like for me, seeing that moose, that's like a highlight of my life.
Awesome. So we do have a comment and a question. So Jennifer's son is saying that they love the idea that our lives are a series of stories and that we receive knowledge from people's stories and we connect to each other through our stories. Such a great way to build relationships. And then we have a question from Marion Dower who says, in your experience, what are today's urban Indigenous youth desiring the most in education? What curriculum do they connect with the most?
I think that that's a really good question, actually. And this is something that I've had a conversation with my mother about. My mother, so I come from a family of educators, and she would tell me that one of the most difficult things about being or living in the city is that it's all concrete. It's concrete, and we have a hard time to tap in or to engage in that connection. And so a lot of times people are looking for that knowledge or that education that's going to add to their identity. And there's so many aspects to that, whether it be language, but a lot of our language too comes from the land. But the language, the experiences, I think land-based education is so important. And when I say land-based education, I don't mean going outside to learn, although that's part of it. I mean learning from the land. So what does the land have to teach us? And that, I think, can only be done by experience. So we can talk about something like, I know this, but to actually understand it is that experiential factor that is tied to connection, is tied to relationships. And I believe that's one of that sense of belonging for especially young people, to be able to create that opportunity for belonging, but also giving that education that really will inform what their identity is, and who they are as a people. I think that's probably, for me anyways, the most important. The how that's done, there's so many different ways the transfer of knowledge can occur, but being on the land, I think you can never go wrong with that.
It's a great answer. I really like that a lot. Encompasses just a lot. So I think that's really important. And like you said, not so much just being out on the land, but, you know, like you said, how do you actually incorporate, you know, the land into those teaching moments? I think that's really, yeah, that's great. So there's a comment from Lori DeConte who just says, miigwech for your knowledge and stories. So sharing some gratitude there.
That's fine.
Does anybody else have anything that they would like to share or any more questions? So I'm not seeing anything right now. And yeah, maybe I'll take the time to share just a quick story that's happened recently with me and kind of land, and especially, you know, when we're talking about relations and, you know, our relatives, right? So for the last few months, there's been a strong desire and kind of a yearning to be out on the land. You know, last summer was the first time that I really, or 2 summers ago, I guess, it's the first time that I really got out on the land and kind of had the opportunity to learn, you know, and be out on the land. And I've been trying every year to kind of continue that. And so back in February, there's a strong desire again. And I think, you know, I'm Bear Clan, so I think that's part of it as well, right? Spring's coming up, so it's that desire to kind of get out again, right? And so I was going through a lot, you know, in kind of February, early March, and I usually go for like a daily walk every single day, no matter what, you know, what mood I'm in or whatever's going on. I make sure to get out there. And there was one day I was out walking, and, you know, I started recently sharing my gratitude, you know, through prayer and just kind of thanking, you know, Mishomis and Nokmis and our relatives and, you know, everything that's come to my life, whether it's stories, teachings, people, you know, people that are still here, people that have come, that have passed, that are to come, you know, all of these different things. And I was thinking about those things, and I was also thinking about, you know, my role as a future social worker, because that's what I'm pursuing right now, is social work, and thinking about the gifts that I have around identity, you know, so spirit name, my clan, my spirit helper, and then just lived experiences, right? And I was thinking about how all of those different pieces, especially around what they are. So my name is Wabe Jaujak Nimki, which was shared with me, translates to Blue Thundercloud. And I was told that, you know, I would help people through ceremony and through teachings. My spirit helper being Maingan, you know, when you think about the creation story and how that Maingan, that wolf, was kind of there to help the first man, you know, walk beside him, go around naming creation. And then Bear Clan, you know, medicines and such. So I was thinking about all of these different things and how that all really relates to being a helper, you know, or Shkabewis, you can say. And I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about a hard time that I was having recently. And, you know, there was another walk that I was on, and I remember the same thing as well, like you said, you know, just praying, you know, saying like there's a lot of weight on my shoulders and kind of asking for some of that help. And during this walk, I felt like some of that was finally kind of starting to be lifted. You know, it was a really sunny day. I felt great. I felt light. It was good. And, you know, as I was thinking about those things, and as I said that prayer and gave my gratitude and thanks, all of a sudden there was like 3 crows that just started cawing like nuts. Like it was just out of nowhere too. Like I didn't see them come up. I didn't see nothing. And, you know, when I thought about that, I was just kind of was like, that's so weird. Like I literally just said, you know, when we pray, for myself, I say miigwech 4 times, you know, miigwech, oh miigwech, oh miigwech, oh miigwech. And on that last one, it was just ka, 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 you know. So I was like, what the heck? Like that's gotta mean something, you know, like that can't just be like, that's gotta mean something, you know. And I know that, you know, with stories and with our relatives, there's always stories that are connected to it. There's always teachings. And so I decided to start looking about what crow means or what ondeg means. And I read about, you know, a story of ondeg and how ondeg helps people find or renew their purpose, you know. And there's a whole story. I won't go into that story because that's a whole other piece, but it just really illustrated that that's ondeg's role, you know, amongst creation, is that crow goes and helps people, you know, find or renew their purpose. And then last 2 weeks ago at our session, we had Brian Uden, who was speaking about, you know, Anishinabe Moan and the language, and really breaking it down, and not just, you know, saying ondeg means crow, but really breaking down the linguistics of what that actually means. And with his teachings, you know, and his knowledge, he shared that ondeg, when it's actually broken down, it translates to searching for something shining or searching for light. And so when I heard that, I remember I had like chills, my hair was like raised up, you know, because I was like, that's exactly what I was doing kind of in that moment of being out on the land or thinking, or, you know, just trying to kind of find that balance again, or trying to think about what is my purpose as I continue through life? What is my purpose in this next stage of my life as I go into my master's and all of these different things, you know? So I thought it was really interesting. And it also, on a personal level too, I took kind of that shining part of like, maybe that also resembles, even though I don't necessarily, or at the time, didn't feel as though I was kind of radiating, you know, positive energy, goodness, light, that maybe it's a sign that I was actually as well, by just being open and just praying and thinking and reflecting, you know? So it was just, yeah, it was really interesting. So when we were talking about land, yeah, that's what comes up for me more recently in my experience. So I definitely, you know, I think there's so much to be taught there. You know, we have our experiences, we connect with it ourselves, we get curious, we get intrigued, we search, and then we find, and then we go, okay, this is how this applies to my life now. And I think it's such an amazing process. And then even today, quickly, you know, it was funny. There was a couple of geese, and I said a goose call, and you know, and then 2 geese flew over, and I was like, oh yeah, it's like it worked, like it actually, you know, like it's like I got like real happy, you know. I was like, yeah, my goose call's not great, but at least I got them to move, like. So it was just, yeah, I was having fun with that today. So yeah, so that's a bit of my story, I guess, as well. So yeah, miigwech.
Miigwech for that. I really believe that, you know, as you were saying, that we do get messages, or it's really a transferring of knowledge back to us, and we get that through, you know, our Anishinaabe people, or we get that through stories, we get that through each other. Like I've been times where I just happened to be somewhere and somebody said something I just really needed to hear at that time. I don't believe those things are by accident, or and because we're so connected that through these relationships we find these pieces. And sometimes, you know, it takes a while to put it together, or but being on the land, I think it's not just about, it's more than just getting something. Like you feel that connection that is just good for your body, good for your heart, good for your mind, good for your spirit. Like it just is really, really good. So I would say that for anyone who is looking for those answers, or for develop that relationship with the land wherever you are, because you know, could be in the city, but be open to, like, oh, if that bird might mean something, like, or if you're going to give your thanks, just find that little piece of earth out there that you can go and do that, and pay attention to the trees, and find out, like, build that relationship, because it is going to give to you in some way.
Yeah, and I think too, when we're thinking about, like, you know, reciprocity and kind of relationships, I think that's why, and one of the things that you shared, this is why it's so important to share stories, is because we receive, but then it's also, there's an obligation on us to share that knowledge, to have that, as you said, you know, transfer of knowledge as well, right, between people. I think is so important, and so it's great when we can have opportunities like this to share, you know, and I think at times we take that for granted, to just sit down and to just share story, to share laughter, to share medicine, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a couple more comments here. Kay Kyer is saying, this winter when I went out for my walks, I was able to find peace, and I had so much gratitude for my life and my family. Being in the bush has brought so much strength and peace. And then Rhonda DeConti is saying that they appreciate these sessions, logging in from Maine, all the way down there.
You got Rhonda.
Yeah, I think to go back to your comments, I don't know, Kate Kyer, I don't know your first name, sorry, but I think that's one of the things that's, I can't speak for anybody else as well, but for myself, you know, during COVID, that there's been such a strong emphasis back on being on the land and just really taking that, you know, appreciating what it has to offer. And there's such a focus that's been put there, I think, because we've been so, you know, we've been stuck inside a lot of time, especially early on when everybody was there was a lot of fear, right, about even just going outside. So for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important. Like one of the things that you had mentioned is, you know, by sharing our stories and not being afraid to share them, this is what's going to in a way give back to the land, because when we build that relationship to something and that is important to us, then we're going to care for it in a way that is like our relative. And if we see it, we understand it that way, to be able to pass, if we could pass that on to others so that they might be able to understand that themselves, I think we're just going to be all in a better place in the world.
I love that. At times I get hesitant on sharing stories and sharing those experiences, but I love that reframing of, you know, that's how you kind of have that change in worldview, you know? Yeah, I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's 8:03 on one of my times. So it's good timing here. Great stories. Thank you so much, Mona, for sharing, and Dakota, and everyone else that commented in the chat here.